The White Pill is available now at whitepillbook.com. This episode is brought to you by Patriot Gold. Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. RonPaul.gif. It's happening. We have my most requested guest, Destiny, the streamer, finally here to do the show. Destiny, I'm going to give you a whole long intro of how I became aware of you and who you are, because it's kind of fortuitous, which I'm using the word incorrectly. Everyone's like, got to have this guy on your show, got to have a guy on your show. And the way they were portraying you, and I'll be curious to hear if you think that's accurate, is he's a red-pilled leftist. And what he likes to do is to go into spaces that are not usually receptive to left of center ideas and have discussions in good faith and engage with people who are otherwise not interested in hearing such things. I first became aware of you when you were, and we'll talk about this in a second, you did Jesse Lee Peterson's show several times. And I suspect you, like me, have a soft spot in your heart for him, that he's the closest thing in real life you're going to have to Dr. Steve Brule. And no matter what he says, you kind of have to be like, all right, that's just Jesse being Jesse. More recently, when people were like, you got to have this guy on, I watched your debate with Milo Yiannopoulous about Christian nationalism. And I was very kind of taken aback, because for all his faults and whatever, Milo, had a reputation of being very witty, kind of this Oscar Wilde, British, bon mot kind of person. And it was not the Milo that I certainly had a chapter in my book than you write about. He was trying to make the case for Christian nationalism. I felt I could do a better job than he did, even though I'm Jewish. And he was making the case that America's a Christian nation, but the real Christians are Catholics. And that kind of America should be a Catholic nation is really kind of didn't seem to make sense to me. He got very personal with you. And if you read the comments on that debate, they're all, violently opposed to him. So let's talk about this. Is it fair to say that how would you describe your political ideology? And was that intro accurate to who you think you are as a person?
Yeah, I think that depending on the space that I'm in and who I'm arguing with, I either come off as like center right to like far left. There are some things that I guess you could say I'm like center right or right on. So I've always been a big fan of guns. I'm a huge fan of self-defense. I'm a big proponent of capitalism. I'm not like a socialist or communist in any size, shape, or form. Center left views, though, I very much believe in the strength and integrity of U.S. institutions. I think they should be supported. I stand the absolute heck out of them. I'll fight tooth and nail for people that want to attack the NIH, the CDC, the FDA, et cetera, et cetera. And then for far left stuff, on my social positions, I'm pretty far left. I generally support trans people, most LGBT things. Yeah, it just depends on where you're at. I'm a little bit all over the place, but I would say moderately on center left to far left. And then the reputation I have is kind of as I'll confront people that have opposing views of me for a discussion or a debate, depending on the platform.
Yeah, I'm sure you've encountered this to an enormous degree, that anyone who has the slightest hint of unorthodox views is either a psyop, grifter, controlled opposition, shill. There's a list of slurs. And I'm actually someone who's greatly in favor of ideological self-segregation. But one of the costs of this is, unless you pass some kind of weird purity test, you're immediately regarded as outgroup. And it's also kind of interesting because there's an understanding that humans are often self-contradictory, inconsistent, but it's always regarded as in the most nefarious way possible. And it can't be reduced to simply like this person just has a different perspective than I do.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why that is. The two big ones off the top of my head are, one is generally if somebody tells me that they're kind of centrist or they've got a lot of different political views, 9 times out of 10 that person is conservative, just masquerading as a centrist because they don't want the label. So I can understand why people don't trust it. I'm very sympathetic towards that view. There are a lot of people like Dave Rubin, for instance, that'll be like, oh yeah, I'm a liberal, I'm still centered up, but ostensibly every single thing they defend. They're going to defend Trump on every single decision they make. They're going to constantly attack any left leaning establishment, any left leaning position. The Nazis were actually, socialists because it says National Socialists, and Democrats were the slave owners, and blah blah blah. So I can understand why people are reticent to embrace somebody that has like a smattering of political positions, or describe themselves as center leaning. I don't trust those people. I don't even like to describe myself as center leaning, or like a centrist for that reason. And then I think a second thing that happened is I think that I think that it's okay for people to be tribal. Like it's a pretty human thing to look at people around you and then feel good about them supporting you and validating you. Like that's probably an essential and integral part of like human existence. But I think that only works when the groups are pretty small. So like for instance, if you've got like small communities and cities or whatever that all kind of like have similar sets of beliefs, that makes sense. Like I'm from Nebraska. My guess is going to be that most Democrats in Nebraska are going to be warmer towards guns than Democrats living in like Southern California. But the problem is the groups in the world have expanded to encompass everything, so that there's like, we try to fit everybody into like two groups in the United States, because the obsession right now is at the federal level. Probably less than 15% of young people know who like their governor is or their mayor is, unless you live in like Texas, Florida, California. But I bet 95% of people know who AOC is, even though she has no impact on the local politics. So yeah, I think it's the fact that people will mask their political position sometimes so that they get credit for being center leaning because it makes it objective. And then the fact that the political groups we're in have gotten so big that there are now so many different political labels that you have to pass to have like this litmus test of being in that group.
Well, I think it's also so much the case, and I don't think this is necessarily a recent phenomenon, is a lot of people are told since childhood that it's very important that you pick one of these tribes. And then a large part of their identity, at least in terms of politics, is spent defining themselves a member of this tribe and defending said tribe, even if the positions are self-contradictory, or if the positions flip within a few years. You'll have the corporate press be there to feed them talking points about why it's not a contradiction to be for position for to support Bill Clinton when he bans gay marriage, and then to regard him as this great gay rights pioneer, and not even bat an eye because he's obviously one of the good guys, as opposed to those evil Republicans, and they're the bad guys.
Yeah, there are definitely issues with that. I try to think of a left leaning and a right leaning example when I give examples for things, so that I'm being fair. But like the biggest thing that sticks out for me that's unbelievable to me is I have my mother and my father both did Air Force, and I remember when I was a child, my mother cried when she was talking about the Monica Lewinsky proceedings, and she was trying to say, Stevie, you don't understand. Like when I go and I sign into work every day, like the commander in chief, the head of my armed forces, is somebody that is a womanizer, somebody that abuses women and blah blah blah. And that was she felt so strongly about that. And man, when all the stuff about Trump leaked and the way that he talks about women and treats women, she was like, well, Stevie, sometimes boys will be boys. And what are you going to do? And it's like, why were you okay with it here and not here? Or seeing like the big flip, for instance, on I'm doing two conservative examples. Seeing the big flip on Russia was a really big one too. I don't think my parents have ever said the word Russia or China in their entire life. It's always Soviet Union and Chi-Coms. That's that's how far away. Because my mom grew up in the Cold War. She flew the Looking Glass mission, and when she was in the Air Force, and to have them be like kind of warmish or not as cold on Russia now, and they're kind of like, it's just such a weird thing to see how quickly people's positions change. It's like we've always been at war with Oceania stuff from 1984. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's also something, and I hear your thoughts about this. I think the corporate press creates a sense of perpetual present in people's consciousness, and it parallels very much like soap operas, where maybe I'm a little bit older than you. There was a show called Dynasty in the '80s, and Michael Carrington, who's the son of Alexis and Blake, at one point he rapes a character named Colby. And then, like, the actor was popular, so like 2 years later, he's marrying her, and they just pretended this whole rape thing never happened. And you'll have a lot of these narratives that happen in
Wait, can you hold on? I'm sorry. I think I totally missed it. They like raped him in the show or in real life?
no, in the show, like the character raped
Oh.
another character, and then 2 years later they got married, and they like basically pretended he didn't rape her. Like it's just like he just
And they got married in the show.
yeah, in the show. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
sorry. Okay, got it. I
Sorry.
got really confused.
No,
Okay,
no.
go ahead.
The point is the media has these narratives that often are just tangentially related to reality. Even if so, they're not provide the context of like, wait a minute, 2 years ago, this person had the opposite perspective, or
Mhm.
we as the media had the opposite perspective. An easy example to counter your maybe conservative examples is I'm not taking a Trump vaccine. I don't trust anything that comes out of this administration. And then 5 months later, if you don't take this vaccine, you should be, out on the street and read out of polite society. Um, I'm curious if you think this is something that is getting worse, getting better. Is there anything we can do or anything we should do?
Um, This is like, oh man, when I talk to people, there's just like a few things that I wish people could understand, and I think it would like equip all of us to navigate political stuff a lot better. There's a huge myth that people have, and I understand why. We're humans, we're cool, we dominate the planet, we can observe ourselves, we've got great minds or whatever. Humans, the human brain is not fundamentally a truth-seeking machine. That's not what
Yes.
we're oriented towards. Yeah, we're oriented towards things that make us feel good and the things that like, yeah, satisfy us, and that sometimes that runs in the face of what is true. And I wish people would realize that, because sometimes people think that they're on these huge missions for truth, but in reality, they're engaging in cognitive bias after cognitive bias,
Yes.
and just like finding things that affirm and validate their worldview while simultaneously discrediting everything outside of their worldview. Like, I don't trust that guy; he's part of this organization.
Right.
Or like, there are so many people that I'll hear say things like I don't trust the mainstream media. Like, they get paid by blah blah blah. It's like, okay, well, how much money does Alex Jones or Tim Pool or me get paid to like sell you a certain political opinion? Like, why would you necessarily trust us anymore? Why would you trust any alternative media any more than necessarily anybody in the mainstream media, right? Like all of the same problems that exist there in one way or another exist in alternative media. Sometimes in an even greater fashion because there's less oversight. So, yeah, I wish that people would understand that. And then the second thing, everything else I wish are just like pipe dreams. I wish people wouldn't fight with themselves so much over like minor disagreements. Oh god, there's a good quote, but I can't remember it. But it's like the worst enemy to like a leftist is like somebody that's like slightly not the same leftist as them. But it's true on the conservative right as well. You know, you wrote up Milo, and if you look in those groups, like all of those guys are fighting with each other and hate each other too. Yeah, we have to do a much better job at communicating with each other while also assuming that we're not coming from the worst place possible too. Like, I don't like for instance, I'm a big proponent of vaccines, and if you want to have that fight, we can have that fight. But I'm assuming that the majority of people that are anti-vax mandate and and even maybe don't trust the mRNA vaccines, I assume for most of them, it's coming from a place of like worry about potential side effects, about
Sure.
desire to maintain freedom and integrity of their own body and persons. And, you know, that's okay. We can have that discussion. And then I would hope on the right that they would assume that like, okay, well, people on the left are looking at like, what's the best social good? Like, what's the best for public health for people that can't protect themselves? But the problem is that's not the case. People on the left assume that people on the right, you know, are, you know, willingly wanting people to die because they hate scientists and blah, blah, blah. And then people on the right are assuming that people on the left are, you know, just trying. It's like Rush Limbaugh, you know, the Democrats are always looking for a reason to steal your freedoms and encroach on your life and force you to do things and submit to the deep state. And it's overwhelmingly, yeah, dumb.
Well, let's take a step back, because
Yeah.
I agree with you completely. There's about people not being truth-seeking machines. There's if there's like a list of 10 books I recommend people read, Jonathan Haidt's The Righteous Mind would be one of those 10 books, where he points out how our minds work. We have a visceral moral reaction, and then the rational part of the brain fills in after the fact and puts in the reasoning. But I don't want to fight about vaccines, but I want to argue, and this is not at all exclusive Democrats, conservatives, Republican, or progressive. Not only are people not seeking truth, but they're also not seeking necessarily goodness so much as social status. And I think evolutionary psychology is an important factor in figuring out how people, especially the mass man, works. If there is an opportunity for me to justify my outranking somebody else, and we saw this with totalitarian nations, where the myth was, okay, if I capture your destiny, I have you in prison, and I'm like, look, give me 10 names, and you're being tortured. Like, at a certain point, you're like, okay, Michael, all these other 9 people, I got to give the names, or else I'm going to get tortured. It's them or me. But what actually ends up happening is people trip over themselves. We saw this in COVID. We see this in Nazi Germany, in China, North Korea, where I wrote a book about. People trip over themselves, turn in their neighbors, because it gives them a sense of accomplishments. It gives them a sense of, I'm doing the right thing. It gives them a sense of like, I'm a good guy, they're the out group, and therefore I'm enforcing social norms. We see this. One of the points I often make, and I don't know if you'd agree or not, is if you want to study human psychology, look at dog psychology. We co-evolved with dogs. And if you tell a dog to roll over, it doesn't think, why do you want me to roll over? It just knows, if I do this, I get a reward. And that kind of mindset, I think, is far more common than the Enlightenment idea of the rational individual would let us believe.
Yeah, I think that when we think about like virtue signaling and people doing things for social status, I don't actually think that's a bad thing. I think that what we should view it as is we should view it as kind of like the invisible hand, the Adam Smith stuff, where essentially the goal is that through some I think there's like Nash equilibrium stuff here too, or like the way that sometimes when you've got a whole bunch of actors that are working in conjunction with each other in a very self-interested manner, in a way, there's a way that social cohesion happens that actually produces a good for everybody in
Yep.
kind of a counterintuitive way,
Yep.
right? So, and I mean, I'll admit, I use virtue signal as an insult to people all the time, but the reality is, it's not really that bad to virtue signal. You should be signaling things that you believe are virtuous. If a parent is taking care of their children and they want to post about, an update on Facebook for buying their kid a toy, or even people, as much as people make fun of them, people giving money to homeless people on the street and then making YouTube videos about it. Like, people might say, "Oh, you're just doing it for virtue," and it's like, okay, sure, but the the guy on the
Wait,
street
hold on.
doesn't care.
That's not my
Yeah.
understanding of the term virtue signaling. My understanding of the term virtue
Mhm.
signaling is a person signaling virtue, like updating their flag to the Ukraine flag, but they're not actually doing virtuous actions. So
Yeah,
taking
that's the part that, yeah, I agree with you. The part that I was going to get to is that, like, the virtue signaling, like signaling that you have these virtues and you behave in a certain way, is good. The problem is when it starts to run incongruent of reality. So
yes,
it's when you start to do the virtue signal, but it's not coupled with the actions. So for instance, somebody giving away $100 to a homeless guy and then recording it for YouTube, fine, that's, you get social credit or whatever, but that's okay. But like, imagine a guy doing that, but it's just his friend and he's like faking it, right? Now you're finding a way to, it's like you're like hacking the system where you're finding a way to accrue social capital without actually putting in the work, right? That would be like, it's like a corruption of a capitalist system where maybe you found a way to create a new product at really cheap cost, but you're dumping like a whole bunch of toxic waste in the river to do it. So I agree with you that that's become a problem where a lot of people seem to be taking very strong positions. Everybody had the black box for BLM. A lot of people have, a Ukrainian or a Russian flag and they can barely find either on a map. People are trying to signal that they belong to these political groups, but they don't even have an understanding of the positions, let alone like a strong like way to back or support or attack them.
well, no, but I mean, just speaking again, and I don't like that this is about. I don't want to talk about the vaccines per se, but let's just talk
Mm-hmm.
about this asymmetry. So
Sure.
I agree with you that a lot of this right of center vaccine hesitancy is about suspicion and that kind of Rush Limbaugh, the deep state wants to control you, but do you not see the parallel on the other side where there's also this visceral thing? This gives me an excuse to have something over somebody else, and therefore I'm going to kind of leverage that power. I've saw it myself when it happened, and this is obviously one data point, so it could be statistical noise, but
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of shocking. I'm a New Yorker, or was until I moved to Austin a couple of years ago, and this was early during COVID. And I was on the subway. I was considered essential worker because obviously you're a podcast, you're essential. And there was an Asian guy in the subway, and he was like Western. It wasn't like he had some kind of weird rickshaw or something. And
Mm-hmm.
some guy in his 40s stood up over him and was screaming at him to go back to where he came from. I filmed it. I couldn't even believe it. Go back where he came from. In very kind of jingoistic, racist terms that you don't really see in New York. And also, if you were that scared of him, giving you the virus, why are you approaching him, coming close? You obviously weren't concerned. This is just your opportunity to kind of put him under your thumb. So I'm curious, do you not see that there's something on that side as well?
Yeah, that there can be, it's kind of corrupting where you just mean like in terms of like people using essentially social political positions to kind of like dump on other people and
Yes,
they're not even that.
exactly.
Yeah, I mean that happens too. Again, the thing that I would encourage people to think about is that, like, that's not always a bad thing. Like, that thing itself isn't necessarily bad. It just depends on like what issue we're talking about. So like for instance, like people throwing huge parties and bragging about like graduating college or high school. That's
Sure.
probably a good thing, right? Or people throwing huge parties and bragging about like having kids or whatever. Like that's probably a good thing. But if it's like an incredibly ego driven thing and it's not being utilized in like a good manner, then it's obviously I would agree that that's a bad thing. um yeah, sometimes there's like broad questions. People are like, oh, is it good or bad to like shame certain behavior, like shaming behavior publicly? And it's like, well, depends on the behavior.
I'm not disagreeing with that in the slightest, and I think shame is actually essential to a functioning society because you're not going to ever have any state to be able to enforce norms. So they have to be enforced, voluntarily and culturally. But
Mhm.
as opposed, I'm not speaking about like throwing a party because you had a kid or you got married or whatever. I'm talking about, you were saying that we should look at people and assume that they kind of have good motivations. My point is, in my view, it's not that they have good or bad motivations, that humans are functionally animals. That could be a good thing. Animals are often benevolent, altruistic. They look after each other, self-sacrificing, and all these other things. But they're often very savage and unpredictable. And when you have an opportunity for low-status people to kind of flex on those who would otherwise be outranking them in some context, they're not coming at it from a place of rationality or I've done their homework and I think vaccines are preventative in terms of symptoms of this disease. They're looking at it like, aha, now I get to go to this person, berate them, and rather than be shamed for them and act like a bore, I'm going to be valorized for it.
Oh, sure. I understand what you mean. Um, I'd slightly agree, but I would augment this a little bit. When I say that I don't like it when people assume people are evil, I don't think anybody, or there are very few people that are truly evil. I think most people are trying to do generally what's right, and then there's a lot of people that are, there's a lot of people that act selfishly. I'll say that. So, like for instance, I do agree that there is a lot of the like just like the berating of people and using certain platforms as an opportunity to bully or attack people.
Yeah.
Like there are definitely people I see online on Twitter, and I was like, 10 years ago, if you would have been a high school student, you would have been the bully. Even though you're acting like today, you're defending the marginalized. Like you're not. You're just using it as a platform to attack other
Right.
people. But I guess what I say when I try to encourage people to not view the other side as enemies, usually the rationale for all of this is going to be built on a lot of years of like these are certain things that I've been taught, because like people think that this type of thing is okay and this type of thing isn't, and I'm even if I'm acting selfishly, like I don't think I'm doing the worst thing in the world, and I'm like seeking credit and validation from my peers, that like there can be people that are acting kind of in shitty ways, but like I don't think they're like evil people to the core. Like if they got sat down and had a good talking to and were like had slightly different like social situations, I do feel like they would act differently. But I mean I'm not going to disagree that there are definitely a lot of people that use certain political positions as opportunities to bully people. But I think that the reason why I stress this point is because I think that once we start viewing our political adversaries as enemies, that you've essentially lost like a functioning country. Because now, like how many people think that, like, so here's like a statement I'll make. Like I think bipartisanship, I would say, is good almost for the sake of bipartisanship, because it shows that you're capable of working with people with different ideas, which is it's like a baseline functioning part of this country. We have to be able to work with people with different ideas. And as soon as you view the people that you're opposite of as enemies, bipartisanship goes out the window. Why would I work with? I'm not going to be bipartisan with a Nazi. I'm not going to be bipartisan with a neo-Marxist. I'm not going to be bipartisan with a guy that wants to groom my kids. I'm not going to be bipartisan with a guy that wants to take my kids, right? So I think that issue of viewing people as evil, it basically precludes us from ever being able to work with them in any capacity, because now they're just the enemy. Why would you want to compromise with Hitler or Stalin?
Right. Okay. I mean, I take the opposite tack. I don't want people to be working together in a political level. So this
You want
kind
to be able
of
to work together?
no,
Really?
not at all. I'm an anarchist, so I want there to be
Oh, okay,
complete
okay.
political impasse and stalemates, and this is kind of heartening to hear. I'm curious talking about your. Let's talk about Jesse Lee Peterson,
Okay.
because what was your thinking in going to? You've been to Show several times. What is he like in person? Is he really like that in real life?
Yeah, he's the exact same. I feel like he's had a stroke or two. He's the exact same kind of person. That is him. Or at least when I see him, he is. Maybe way off camera, way in a different area, he's different, but he seems to be pretty consistent. Yeah.
Folks, Jerome Powell and the Fed raised rates for the 11th time in July. The Hill has warned that it's a mistake that could spark a recession, and economists believe this is the last rate hike in the most aggressive rate hike cycle in history. And in fact, they're forecasting rate cuts in 2024. That's why bullish sentiment in gold for hedge funds just hit an 18-month high. And in fact, bullish sentiment for silver has risen at its fastest pace in more than 5 years. JP Morgan Chase sees gold prices at record highs in 12 to 18 months. Rate hikes are typically headwinds for gold. Meanwhile, gold has gone up over 20% since 2022. Imagine where gold and silver are going to be when the Fed stops raising and starts cutting. So call the proud Americans of the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late and mention my name, Michael Malice. You'll always get best-in-class service from Patriots protecting Patriots. Patriot Gold Group has the no fee for life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold and silver, and you may be eligible for the no fee for life IRA on qualifying rollovers. Here's what you have to do. Call 888-505-9845 to get a free investor guide, or simply go to malicegold.com. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold IRA dealer 6 years in a row. So please call 888-505-9845 or just go to malicegold.com. Let's get back to the show. Okay, let's talk a bit about that debate with Milo, because were you, and I would encourage everyone to go watch this debate for themselves. What was your thinking going in? What was your thought process while this was happening? Were you surprised to see basically, who he is now compared to who he was during, I'd say, the height of his powers? And let me just give a little background in my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I think Milo basically got Al Caponed. They were just trying to throw whatever they could at the wall at him, and eventually this pedophile thing where he, basically came out as the victim of childhood sexual abuse. That's what they got him on. If it was someone other than Milo, you would have, in my opinion, a lot of people tripping over themselves and talking about heteronormativity and how this is far more common in especially historically in the LGBT community than it is in heterosexual relationships, and it doesn't parse one to one as people like to have it be. But if it's Milo, since any nuance is left out the window, thrown out the window, and basically he was just throwing the trash at the same. So I can't imagine what's like going from what he was there to now, and that must have been very traumatic for him. But at the same time, I don't understand why there was this lack of his very famed debating ability.
Yeah, that's an interesting take on Milo. I would disagree with every single part of that.
Okay.
But my personal view of Milo is he's an absolutely dogshit, worthless human being that offers no good contribution to anything political whatsoever. He exists solely as a provocateur. He has no thought underlying any of his ideas, and he's saying whatever he can to basically like incite people to, feel a certain type of way. That's my perspective on him. But I feel like with my perspective on him, I feel like I can retroactively and prospectively analyze his behavior. Like retroactively, obviously he got in a lot of heat in a lot of different places for a lot of different things and trying to be very provocative towards people, getting banned from campuses for, trying to get students harassed and getting, obviously that radio show that he did where he talked about the, the preacher stuff was like really provocative. I feel like what's happened to him is he's essentially kind of bounced around a lot of areas. He's gotten basically axed from a lot of areas because of positions he's taken, especially the pedophile stuff. And I think that now he's just his new like kind of home community is like basically this very niche like Christian right community where somehow he found his way in the good graces of Kanye West, or Ye, formerly known as Kanye West. And he kind of had put together this small little group of far right people, Fuentes and a few others, but obviously like these relationships were all tenuous at best. So they didn't maintain and they've all fallen apart. And yeah, I think he's just trying to latch on to the next small group of people that he can be a provocateur with. But I don't think there's much like Milo Yiannopoulous is very much a character. And there is no person underneath that I've ever seen or met before. Like it is a facade that he lives and exists as every single day, and it doesn't feel like there's much underneath that. Yeah, just from my perspective.
That's not an unfair characterization, but let me kind of clarify what I was saying.
Mhm.
That character, at the very least, was glib, quick-witted. Had a certain kind of charm to him. I mean, back in the day, I didn't see any of that in his debate with you. Do you not think that when he was at the height of his powers, he had a certain charisma about, at the very least, the character?
So as somebody that's done, I've been streaming for 13 years. I'm going to take like a very minor psychological approach to this, and I
Sure.
could be completely wrong. Um, the line between like glib and charismatic and gloomy, edgy, unfunny, and kind of like just brooding and dark, sometimes it can literally just be the difference in popular support. Like, yeah, there are debates that I could see myself having where I just like go in on somebody and it's just kind of like a smaller figure, nobody knows them much, the attacks feel undeserved, and I just kind of look like an asshole and nobody really supports me. And then I could see it happening in front of a larger audience of people that support me, where this guy's maybe said a few things about me and I get like, thunderous applause. I think that the problem with Milo is I don't actually think Milo has changed that much. I think that the audience interest of him has decreased, and then his choice of adversaries has decreased quite a bit, right? So up to that point in the conversation, actually, it might have just been his opening statement, even. And then our communications beforehand, I had been really cordial. Sean from Uncensored America had put this event on. I showed up on time. Milo was like an hour and a half late. Like I'd done everything to conduct myself in a good
Yeah.
manner. I hadn't trashed Milo at all publicly. So for him to come on stage and just attack me, I'm sure it looks bad. It doesn't look charismatic or witty or funny or charming. But if he had let me take the opening statement, and if I would have taken shots at him, and then he would have come back and made fun of my wife and me and all that or whatever, there's a chance that the perception would be a lot different. They'd be like, oh yeah, like, oh, Milo's getting this guy. But instead, especially today, like I present myself as like a relatively chilled person. If you're going to be chill towards me, I'm not going to go in on you. I think it just kind of looks like sad. But I think that if you were to take, I think he is like the same guy. It's just the audience is way smaller and the appetite for that type of stuff has decreased quite a bit. But if you throw him in front of the right audience, he might still come off like really positively. It's just that audience is harder to find today.
One of the things you said, which I thought was just very, very smart and very perceptive, is you were kind of frustrated at, left of center circles, how they've ceded the American flag to, not just the right, but basically MAGA.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry if I'm misquoting you, but something to the effect of, like, it's kind of crazy that we live in America. America is an awesome country. And to pretend that this flag is something that it belongs only to a group that we're opposed to, or that is something we're ashamed of, and especially given how many great things America has done historically worldwide, it's just leaving money on the table and making us look needlessly stupid. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, the Democratic establishment has a problem with like, is it self-flagellation or flagellation? That's not the fart, is it?
No, no, that's flatulence. Flagellation's when you
Flatulence.
whip yourself. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, self-flagellation. We have a big problem on the left of like, okay, like today we're going to learn what it's like to be left-wing in America. If you're white, you have to hate yourself. If you're heterosexual, you have to hate yourself. If you're from a nuclear family, you have to hate yourself. If you're, right, it's just like it's a fucking downer, dude. It's not fun. I think Jordan Peterson and others have described it as kind of like a locus of control. That
Yeah.
for conservatives, it's very much an internal thing. Like, well, if I'm poor, it's my fault, and I'm going to be the one that gets me out of it. If I'm wealthy, it's because I did it, I
Yes.
deserved it. If I've got these issues, I'm the only one who can fix it, right? In some cases, it's hilariously, optimistically naive and silly, but it's empowering. It feels good. That type of like naive empowerment can feel good. It motivates you. And then on the left, I would argue that in some ways it's a little bit more of a realistic outlook on life, but it's also a downer. And then sometimes as a result of it being a downer, it becomes less realistic. So for instance, like, oh, like I'm black, so everybody's going to turn down my job application because they're not going to take me seriously. Like that could become a self-fulfilling prophecy if you believe it
Yes.
enough. When you externalize all the control of your life and all these other areas, it makes you seem like it sucks. There's I wish I could remember in 2016 or was it 2020? There, one of the guys on stage in the Democratic primary basically said that I wish I could remember, a bald guy. But he basically said that the Democratic Party has a problem with demonizing success. And I think that's true. I don't think we celebrate success at all on the left. And we need to do a way better job at that kind of messaging. And yeah, it's a downer that like everything is about how horrible we are and how horrible the US is. And did you know that slavery was bad and that every single foreign intervention we did was always horrible and blah, blah, blah. Like we talk about Vietnam, but we don't talk about South Korea. We talk about slavery, but we won't talk about how this is probably the most successful, diverse, and most diverse country on the planet. Like, yeah, it sucks, man. And then even on the right, they do it now too. I would argue that the populist right, like the Trump people, also hate America. Like they say they like America, but like America doesn't get credit for anything because they're also like hardcore isolationists. They don't support any of our large successful businesses. Like, yeah, I don't know, man. It's a downer, especially on the left. But yeah.
The one asterisk I would put to what you're saying, and I'm sure you'll agree, is there's this whole Black excellence movement, which points out Black people who are successful, achieving, and creating businesses on their own terms. And I think that is a very healthy approach. I worked with D.L. Hughley, the comedian, Black comedian, on 2 of his books, and he was talking about how when he was young and the Cosby Show was on, and it was very important for Bill Cosby, to have he's a doctor, his wife on the show is a lawyer, to show to the Black community, look, you can achieve anything. And he told me how at the time he thought this was just kind of absurd and ridiculous, and in retrospect, he's like, you know what, this was actually really important, and also a different world to show, African American university or Black university technically, to show that like, look, you should not have to worry about being on good times and just living in these disadvantaged situations. You can achieve great things if you just put your mind to it and work hard toward that. And again, this is something that I don't think has to be a left or right thing. I think this is just a healthy thing society socially, to kind of encourage young people to be like, shoot for the stars, and sometimes you're actually going to get there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I truly do believe, and I'm not even saying this. Well, I guess I am saying this as an American. I do believe that America is the most exceptional country in the world when we're willing to put our minds together and work on a thing. When the United States puts its mind to something, we can accomplish great things. We can accomplish terrible things. We can accomplish wonderful things. We just have to be like united on that front, and we're not. And then when we're not, right, a house divided can't divided amongst itself can't stand. Like when we're not united, we're schizophrenic, and then like nothing gets done, and it's just horrible. Yeah, but I think part of that uniting is at the end of the day, like whether you're Black, Asian, white, or whatever, like we have to see ourselves collectively as Americans, and we all have to be able to be proud of the country that we're in, because if we're not, man, like why would you even care to fix it?
Yeah, I think the thing is there's at least 2, I would say there's probably 4 definitions of what American means. And it's very hard to make that Venn diagram between 2 of them, let alone all 4 groups. And, one of the big arguments you hear online, I'm sure you hear this in your circles all the time, is, oh, we need more political parties, we need political parties. And, you point to Canada, which has 3, kind of thriving ones and a couple of minor ones, the People's Party, the Green Party. You look at, all these countries in Europe where they have like 9 parties in parliament. I don't know if they're particularly more functioning either socially socially or politically or parliamentarily than we are here in the States. So I think it's kind of gets tricky. And also this kind of, I want to hear your thoughts on kind of this siloization of America, where, different groups aren't even talking to one another. You're going to have there's a big population that gets all its news directly from Fox News. You're going to have some equivalent, maybe from the New York Times. And it's really hard to kind of bridge the gap because they're at the very least not even receiving the same data.
Yeah, I think I've read this academically. These are called epistemic bubbles, where
Yes.
you have certain friends, you subscribe to certain social media feeds, and without even doing anything bad, like you're not committing epistemic fallacies personally. You haven't like gone out of your way to act in an improper manner without necessarily doing anything bad. All of a sudden, you're living in a totally different reality than somebody else. Something I say before that ties into the first thing: humans are not fundamentally truth-seeking machines. For a human to see a pattern, you really only need like 1 to 3 events to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you're talking to a guy and he's like, bro, I'm so over Indian people in New York, chances are that guy had 1, maybe 2 bad experiences with an Indian person. And that's enough for the billion plus Indian people. Like, boom, I'm done with them, Or look at like the BLM stuff, like how many violent cop killings, or suspect killings can I show you in a year before it's a big problem? Some people would say that like if I showed you 1 a week, is that a problem? It feels bad, right? 52 a year, that feels unbelievable. But do you even know how many cops are in the country? Do you even know how many interactions there are between police and perpetrators? Do you expect or suspects? Do you expect the number to be 0? Is that realistic? Right? Is 1 too many? Is 20 too many? Is 100 too many? Like, people don't even have in their head like a mind for any of these issues. You ask, it happened with Matt Walsh when he got asked on the Rogan show, how many kids do you think are on puberty blockers? And he's like, I don't know, millions. And I'm like, bro,
Wait, did he really say millions?
He said millions. Yeah. And I'm like, bro, that number is like, it's like 1,000 a year, maybe. It was just an unbelievable answer. You ask people on the left, how many unarmed black people do you think are killed by cops every year? I'm like, I don't know, 1,000, 5,000, hundreds. It's like the answer is like 12. It's way, 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 way smaller than anybody thinks. That Sound of Freedom movie is out, and I saw some numbers. We were on stream, and I saw a number posted on their website, and it was like, in the United States, 500,000 children go missing each year. I'm like, 500,000?
That's not possible.
Yeah, that's a huge number. I'm like, I have a rough idea of population. That's an insane number. But the number is actually 500,000 are reported missing. So like if your child runs away, you call the cops, and then like you find them like a day later. That's like counted in that number, right? Like 98% of those are resolved within like a few days, But people,
And then then you already know the response is, oh, you're saying 98% resolved, so it's not a problem. So like immediately the heuristic is just like anytime someone tries to have any perspective, what they hear is you're trying to dismiss this as an issue and it doesn't really exist as a problem.
Yeah, because the facts aren't really important. The facts are just proxies, essentially, for moral positions. And when you argue against any of the facts, people feel like you're arguing against the moral position. Yes. I don't think we should have homeless people in the United States, but if I argue against rent control, because I think rent control is a shitty policy, people are like, oh, so you're pro-homelessness? It's like, no, what the fuck? There was a lady, I don't even think she's a real person, but there was somebody on Twitter the other day, like 2 days ago, Ada Lulch or something, where she tweeted out a bunch of pictures of an innocent woman that got attacked in France by a group of like a dozen North Africans for dressing improperly. And the picture, it's like 5 pictures of a woman with a bunch of scars on her face, or stitches, not scars, stitches from wounds and everything. And yeah, that was her story. And I did like 5 minutes of research. It wasn't a dozen North Africans. It was 4. The lady wasn't alone. She was with a group of friends. We don't know if it was because she was dressed improperly. Everybody was leaving a party and drunk, And I pointed this out. I was like, oh, and also the lady herself was a North African. It wasn't like an immigrant attacking a native. It was North Africans, right? Now, none of this is to excuse what happened. But like as soon as I tweeted, like, why not get the facts right? People are like, oh, so you think it's better to get beat up by 4 North Africans instead of 12? And I'm like,
oh,
no,
so you don't care if women get assaulted? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, come on, bro. Like, are you saying like if it's bad, and there are things that are bad, report it accurately. Like, it's bad on its own. You don't have to make shit up, because as soon as you make shit up, now people are going to look at you and they're not going to trust anything, Right. And yeah, it's just it's so frustrating that we live in I don't want to say like the post-fact world, but like, because humans are always post-fact. Like you said, we have moral intuitions and then we ad hoc, we rationalize them. Facts are always proxies for just like moral feelings. Like I can predict like 95% of what a person thinks just by like, do you support Donald Trump or do you support Andrew Tate or are you vaccinated? Like I can start to guess all of their political positions because they're all just like proxies for the groups, that we belong to, or did you support like, the BLM movements, or are you pro-vax, or did you support Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren? Right, you can project so many movements. That's just it's a
I'll give you an example from left and right to kind of go along with what you're saying. You hear one of the things I disagree with very heavily with conservatives is when they're talking about how the budget's too high, the deficits are too high. And it's like, look, if you want to cut these programs and you think the programs are counterproductive or a waste of money or evil, that's fine. Like, this is just your excuse to get to that result that you want, because they'll talk about, okay, the debt's $20 trillion. It's like, okay, what number is too much and how are you getting to that number? Can we handle 100 trillion? Can we handle one? I always point out in the 1970s, Barry Goldwater, who's literally called Mr. Conservative, wrote Conscious of a Conservative. He had a book called The Coming Breakpoint, and he's talking about how in the 70s, if deficits continue as they're going, America is going to have to default and it's going to go bankrupt. Reagan comes along, the deficits go through the roof, the debt goes through the roof, and here we are. I'm not saying we're at economic nirvana, but the point is we have not economically collapsed. We're not even at Great Depression levels. The debts are still going up. Now, what they're going to hear is, oh, so you're saying we can have debt in permanently? No, I'm just saying that if you're saying 20 trillion is too high, that's a huge number. Where are you getting the number where it's a problem?
yeah.
And for the left, the other answer is teachers should be paid more. Okay, you can't write more in a check. Like, what is the rate that teachers should get, and how are you determining that number? Is it double, triple, 10 times? And there's no answer. The answer is whatever they're paid, they're not getting paid enough, and they're getting paid more. But again, that doesn't get you to an actual salary, which is what the whole discussion is about. It's just a direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think U.S. debt for conservatives, that's like their version of climate change.
Yes,
Where
yeah.
people on the left for a long time have like, the whales are all going to be dead, like no more polar bears, the planet's going to, hellscape over, it's going to freeze over, it's going to blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I saw the Gore stuff, and it's like, it is getting hotter. I do think climate change is a problem, but it's probably not as dramatic as they said. And now we're like, well, was it? Do we believe them at all? And then for conservatives, it's the same thing. Next year, we're going to default on all of our debt, and we got to buy Bitcoin because the USD is going to be fucking worthless, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm saying, okay, like, come on. And if you guys really felt this strongly, like, why is it that every time we get a goddamn Republican president, they fucking run these deficits up more than the Democrats sometimes? It's insane, Like, Trump spent so much money. Why?
But that's always the Democrats' fault.
Is it?
Well, they always say that. It's like, what do you want him to
Yeah.
do? He only had 51 senators, blah, blah, blah. It's like, there's never, I always point this out, there's never an attempt by Republicans when they're in DeSantis in Florida is a good example. He has supermajorities. He's not cutting the budget. The budget's increasing year to year. Now, you could say it's a good thing. You can say that this is going toward functional ends. Florida's doing great, all these other things. Point being, clearly this is a case where you can spend more every year, and this is not having this kind of catastrophic consequences that you are pretending in other contexts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then when Republicans get in, they always want to cut taxes. They don't pair it with spending cuts, and it's like, I mean, what do you think is going to happen? It's dumb. Yeah.
Folks, your welcome is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Hey, whether you love true crime or comedy or celebrity interviews, news, even motivational speakers, you call the shots on what's in your podcast queue, right? Guess what? Now you can call the shots on your auto insurance too. Enter the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. The Name Your Price tool puts you in charge of your auto insurance by working just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance, then they'll show you a variety of coverages that fit within your budget, giving you options. Now, that's something you want to press play on. It's easy to start a quote. You'll be able to choose the best option for you fast. It's just one of the many ways you can save with Progressive Insurance. Quote today at progressive.com to try the Name Your Price tool for yourself, and you can join the over 29 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates, pricing coverage match limited by state law. Let's get back to the show. What is your kind of biggest source of frustration in contemporary discourse, especially on the internet?
It has to do with the epistemic bubbles that we spoke about. The epistemic bubbles and the echo chambers. The fact that like people live in completely different realities today, and the groups have gotten so huge. There's like 2 or 3 huge political factions in the United States that every single person belongs to. Like, I'm pretty sure at this point you can be in like fucking rural Oklahoma and somebody's going to walk up to you and say, "What do you feel about Leah Thomas?" And it's like, it's just gotten so absolutely insane in the United States how big and all encompassing these political groups are, how much it permeates every single facet of our lives, all of the apps on our phones, all of the games we play, the movies, everything. I wish that there was just a way to kind of like bring the two worlds back in alignment with each other, because the frustrating thing is like there's so many good conversations that just don't happen because we're so like hyper polarized. sorry, that most of the research I've done recently or over the past few years has been vaccines. That's why my mind goes back to a lot.
Okay, sure.
I think there's a lot of really, really, really good conversations to be had about what does a vaccine mandate look like, or at what stage do we need one, or do we need one ever? Like, there's a lot of good conversations there, but instead, people take up like the most ridiculous positions. Like on the left, it'll just be, whatever the government says, we've got to do it, and blah blah blah. And it's like, clearly, like that's not workable politically, and most people aren't going to be on board with that. On the right, it'll be like, well, I'm never in favor of a mandate ever, and it's like bullshit. If there was a virus that was killing 50% of children in the country, Republicans would be first in line telling everybody they need to get vaccinated. But there is an interesting conversation like, how deadly does a disease need to be before this is like a public health issue that becomes mandated, or we excise people from society. But those conversations never happen. Instead, it's like, was this a Chinese manufactured bioweapon? Are Republicans a death cult? It's just like, yeah. And on every single issue that we talk about, it's like there are so many potential good conversations that can happen. It could be about trans stuff, it could be about immigration, it could be about deficit spending, and instead it's just like the Democrats want to do this and destroy your life, and the Republicans want to do this and destroy your life. And it's like, okay, well, if that's where the conversations are over here, then we're not getting any farther on any of these issues.
Well, I think part of the anti-vax frustration is the fact there was enormous asymmetry in terms of the feasibility of having one's views heard. I'm sure you remember very vividly, if you have certain unorthodox views, whether they're complete crazy lies, such as COVID doesn't exist, or things that are more like, wait a minute, this possibility, this is a lab leak, let's look into this. Both of these views were treated kind of as identically and being heavily censored, by various tech organizations. So that doesn't even speak to the kind of the facts of the matter or the arguments. I think a lot of the frustration is we're not even being allowed to have this discussion to begin with.
Yeah, something that I'm happy about, I wish this would have happened sooner, was I think that the mass attempt at censoring certain conversation was probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
I think a lot of social media companies in the past several months or few months, I think, have finally started to roll back on those policies. Like, I think on YouTube now you can discuss like anti-vaxxer stuff, or I think people that deny the election, you can talk about this stuff again. You just got like a little warning pop up. I think that's a good middle ground. I wish we would have discovered that sooner. I like the little pop-ups where it's like, hey, if you want more information about this, read here. It happens on
Yeah,
Twitter, it happens
that's
on
fine.
YouTube. Yeah, but just I think there's an argument to be made potentially for censoring some types of conversations. I'm sure we could think of some, but when 40% of the American public believes it, that is a conversation that has to happen, right? You can't just sweep it under the rug and assume that 80% of the conservative movement in the United States is going to disappear and we don't have to worry about it. That's an insane position to take.
I
And if you live in a country where every single person in these United States, Bill Gates and the crackhead down the street that lives outside the gas station both have one vote in this country. They both have the exact same amount of voting power. If we're going to entrust every single citizen to vote, well, fuck, they should be able to talk about, whether they think COVID came from a Chinese weapons lab, or whether they think that, the immigrants on the border are going to come and invade the country and replace white people. Like, we might as well have the conversation if we can all vote on the same shit, Yeah.
But I would disagree a little bit because I don't think it's an insane position. I think it's an outdated position. Because if you look at maybe when you and I were kids or a little before that, you had three networks: ABC, NBC, CBS. And if they wanted certain views not to be regarded as part of the mainstream or part of the national conversation, they had that power to basically make that happen and to vanish entire schools of thought. With the rise of talk radio and limbo in particular, you had kind of these more unorthodox from the, kind of what had previously been regarded as orthodox position. And now with the rise of social media, like literally anyone with a tinfoil hat, and as we're speaking, Alex Jones's tinfoil hat is on the wall behind those doors, can have their point of view expressed. But I think they're still thinking of it in terms of that 1970s vision, where like, okay, we have these three levers, and between that we can kind of navigate what's the Overton window, whereas they don't realize how much technology has passed them by.
Yeah, possibly that there are ways where conversations are going to happen whether you like it or not.
Right.
Although I don't, it's we did like a thing that we did like this, where we started off with like, all the corporate media, and then stuff started to expand, and then we got like the World Wide Web. And the internet isn't very much like a web anymore, where it's a bunch of like little places that are all connected via,
It's a series of
tubes on the internet.
tubes.
Not even that. It's actually kind of regressed back to, I know what you're referencing, yeah, but it's actually kind of regressed back to being like 4 or 5 different institutions.
Yes.
Kind
Yeah.
of. Yeah, which is unfortunate. Like, it used to be back in the day, like if you were to use Google, you're looking across like the entire internet for, I want to find information about this thing. But now, really, Google is just kind of the most expensive archiving website for Wikipedia, Reddit, YouTube, Facebook, Quora, Stack Overflow. There's like 10 sites on the internet that are just basically indexed by Google, and that's basically what you're searching for every time you look up an answer. The Mayo Clinic. Yeah. So unfortunately, I think we have almost wrapped back around where censorship can actually it is damaging how much you can delete people off the internet. There are alternative ways to express it, but depending on how hardcore you get deleted, it's really hard to overcome that.
I have no idea what you're going to say to this. So I'm extremely curious to hear your answer. What is your view on Robert Kennedy and his campaign and how it's being handled, both by the media apparatus and social media in general?
Again, obviously, the only stuff I've seen on him is the vaccine stuff, which to me makes him seem like an absolute fucking lunatic. So I have no regard for the person. I don't know how he's being handled. Was he one of the people that was saying that like Biden needs to have debates or whatever?
I mean, this is one of those talking points on the right, which is just not historically accurate, because whenever you have an incumbent, they never have debates.
Yeah, of course not. Why would you want to attack your own party? Why would you do that? Yeah.
You're saying, of course, but again, with that perpetual present thing, people have the impression that, like, if you're the incumbent, like in 2020, Trump would have had debates. That's just not how it works. And to your point, it's like, if I have the White House, why would I, as the party, roll those dice and risk my, candidate getting knocked off? That doesn't make any sense. There were, but I'm sure that is one of his points, that we should have a debate on this issue, and so on and so forth. But again, they're not being nefarious, or certainly they're being within historical tradition in not having debates when they have the incumbent in the White House.
Yeah, and strategic. Like, you shouldn't. If Trump was there, I wouldn't expect Trump to have like debates and like to have Republican challengers, because why would you want to run somebody against your incumbent? Like, that's so silly.
Are you white pilled or black pilled about the future of America?
Can I be boring and say great pilled? Like, I think I know what needs to happen. I just don't know like if
Well, what do you think needs to happen? And like, we got to kind of make these three jumps kind of and go through those hoops. Like, what would those hoops be?
I mean, on the most macro thing, people just need to talk to each other again. Like, really have conversations with each other. That's the most important thing. In order for that to happen, I mean, people need to be aware of the limitations of their brain, right? Don't go in thinking like, I'm not going to be biased. Instead, go in saying like, I am biased, but I'm going to try to be aware of how I'm biased. People need to learn how to read an entire fucking article and stop reading just headlines that you see on Twitter. That's so infuriating to me, that people just read a headline and they think they have all the information,
and they'll double down when you point out the article. They'll still, like, it doesn't matter, and they'll just still go by the headline.
Yeah, like, I've argued with journalists that don't even read a lot of stuff. The amount of political partisan buy-in. I debated a couple of people that worked on like Twitter file stuff, and it's shocking to me where we're at in some of these things. But yeah, like good epistemic practices in terms of like how to read media. That's even too sophisticated. You don't even have to worry about that. People need to be able to talk to each other again. They need to be able to read an entire news article. They need to not assume that the other side is like a political enemy. I think if those three things happen, I think that we'd be in a significantly better spot. But right now, people just read headlines that they're fed by an algorithm that's like passively feeding them whatever they want to see. They assume that the other side is literally the enemy. And we live in just totally different realities as a result of these two things. And it's like destructive to the country. Yeah.
Well, that sounds pretty black-pilled, because it sounds like from your perspective, there's very little chance of that changing certainly in the near future.
It has to come from it has to come from a combination of the bottom up and the top down. There have to be more people in media that are willing to have these conversations legitimately. Do you know who do you know the PBD valuetainment people? Have you ever heard of these?
Oh God, it was really funny. I just did that show a couple of weeks ago, and he just kept, like, it was the second time I did it. I like Patrick a lot, but they kept like interrupting me, and all the comments were like, why are you having this guy on if you want to let him talk? So spoiler alert, next time I do PBD, I'm going to bring a little bell. So if I'm trying to talk and they cut me off, I'm just going to ring the bell to be as annoying as possible.
Okay. Yeah. I've been on their show a couple times. I'm friends with Adam, and I've done the PBD show once, and they're very polite people. Like, they seem like good people, but oh my God, did you see the show they did recently with Anthony Weiner?
I only saw the clip that went viral.
I don't know which one you saw, but there's
I was like, why are all these dead people around Bill Clinton? And Weiner's like, well, they're old. And he's like, yeah, but they don't say this about Bush. They don't say this about Trump. That was the clip I saw.
Okay. If you ever get bored, you should watch the 18-minute segment. It's insane. So the guy starts off by saying, like, here are 3 conspiracy theories that people say that we don't think are true, but he still lists them with some kind of detail.
Patrick, you mean?
Patrick does, yeah. And then Patrick says, John Wayne, John Smith, blah blah da da. He reads down a whole list of like 45 people, and Anthony Weiner's just like saying, like, what are you doing? What's happening? Are we going to go through each of them? And Patrick keeps cutting him up, like, no. How are all of these people around the Clintons dead? And it was just like the most bad faith line of inquiry I've ever seen in my entire life. And then when Anthony Weiner starts to bring up, like, this guy died in a plane accident, how is this related to the Clintons? And obviously, PBD didn't want to go into anything. He didn't want to get into the specifics on any of them because he got this. I think Anthony's like, what website did you get this off of? What website did this come from? And then he finally says it's like www. I don't remember. It was like freedomforamerica.com. It was obviously like a dumb fucking Hillary Clinton conspiracy website. But like, that has to stop. That kind of discourse is literally destroying the country. I think it's okay to be politically partisan. It's okay to be a Democrat. It's okay to be a Republican and to have a little bit of allegiance to your party. But it has to come from a place of good faith. It can't be these like railroading destructions of opponents and like the most bad way possible, because it's destroying the country. It's just so horrible.
I'll tell you guys a funny story. I was on Michael Knowles' show and we did his game show, Face Off.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about dictators. He had won every single episode up till that point. I did it with him. We tied. It went to a tiebreaker. The question was, how many people are on the Clinton kill list? He got it. He got it right, but I started complaining. I go, there's no official Clinton kill list, right? You're gonna have one list that's 300 people. You have one list that's 50, blah blah. So then we went to another tiebreaker, and it was, how old is Barack Obama? And I got it exactly right. He got it within a few years, but they edited it, and he got the win from that first question, which I still say is not an objectively fair question. So Michael Knowles, you're put on blast for this one. It was a very fun experience. Let me ask you one of my litmus test questions. Do you think some people are better than others?
I'm gonna give you a really boring answer again, and I would say, like, with respect to what? I mean, like, it seems hard to believe, and undeniably, like, some people must be better than other people, right? If I've got like a doctor that's like an award-winning brain surgeon that travels to poor African villages to save starving children from brain cancer, that guy is probably a better person than like a serial child rapist, right? Like, it would be hard to say these two people are the same. But I mean, like, from a religious standpoint or from like a moral standpoint, like, is any one man better than another? Only God can judge. If you're a Christian, yeah, that's my boring fence-sitting answer on that. It would say, if I had to pick one, I would say it seems to be the case that, yeah, some people are probably better than other people, sure.
You're the first person to break this litmus test, because how it works is if you're on the right, you say yes, and if you're on the left, you give a speech. But you gave a speech saying yes, so I don't really know where to put you now.
Sure. I think actually, you know what? That's kind of a good summary of a lot of my political views. Because people try to show me, they'll say things like, "Do you think black people commit more crime than white people?" And it's like, yeah, of course they do. I'm not going to sit here and lie about the numbers, but there's a reason why they do it. It's not because they're genetically designed to be criminals, right? So usually it will be like, in some ways, they'll say the right is right about some things, but just for the wrong reasons. So yeah, I guess it fits with me. Fuck it. Yeah.
So let's talk about that. That's something you brought up. When people bring that up, black crime, like, and you say, okay, what are the reasons, and what have you said that would get conservatives to kind of not view you as some kind of knee-jerk bedwetting lefty?
Oh man, dude, theories of crime. I've read so much stuff on what could have caused crime. I've read that there's the abortion theory, that legalizing abortion with Roe v. Wade and everything led to a dramatic decrease of crime from the 90s, because that's when a lot of those people would have gotten to that crime committing age. I've seen
there's Freakonomics, by the way, if people want to look this up.
Oh, okay. There's an economist that did a bunch of research on the idea of like lead additives in soils and paints and the reduction of those, that got rid of a lot of crime in the United States, because lead, we know from a biomechanical level, has negative impacts on human development and aggression and everything. I've seen some theories that once crack and all of these types of drugs became popular in the United States, a lot of gangs fought a lot of wars, essentially settling territory. And now just the territory is more settled, so there's not as much crime. I think the strongest, or one of the strongest predictors of crime I've seen, I think, is income disparity. A lot of people mistakenly will say that poor socioeconomic conditions will lead to more crime. I don't think that's true, because I think in areas where everybody's poor, it doesn't tend to predict more crime. But in areas where there's high economic disparity, so inner cities, we've got like really wealthy areas, really poor areas, that can be a predictor of crime. But yeah, crime is a really complicated topic, and I don't know if I've got like a one-size-fits-all answer. I do know there are some basic things that would make everybody's life better, and it's really good like knock-on effects later on. Access to high-quality education is really important. Having a parent or two in the household that is able to focus on children is really important. Pursuing higher education is important. Having economic opportunity, right? Like, if you have no jobs to work, why not sell drugs? Like, that's really important. Yeah, I would say probably around those like four things. Like, I think everybody can agree that going to school. What are the Ben Shapiro things? A long time ago, Ben Shapiro was like, there's 3 things you need to succeed in life. I think one was like, it was like graduate high school, don't have a kid before you're ready, fuck, and there was one other thing. I'll look this up. But like, yeah, if we could find ways to basically push people in those directions.
Yeah, I think economic opportunity is really very crucial, especially when you're young. If I have the opportunity in my house to like set up an Etsy site, or sell whatever, even do triage or arbitrage rather. I go to my store, I get something for $5, I can sell it in there for $20. Right away, I have money in my pocket, I have a sense of self ownership, and I'm learning skills. That person is in many ways going to be set for life. Whereas if I'm living in a kind of a war zone where I have to worry about, am I going to be able to walk home or to school without getting physically injured, it's going to give me a much more present-oriented mindset. It's going to be much more difficult for me to break out of that.
Yeah, for sure. Providing those opportunities, but now how do you do that is obviously because poverty is a cycle. So like teachers can't break it because once you get the student, like it can already be fucked. Just providing jobs isn't good enough because if they're not educated, it's not going to help. Trying to alleviate like single family problems is challenging because a lot of these people already come from broken families, so they're more predisposed towards creating broken families. It's a very difficult cycle to break. You have to come at it from like 5 different sides, and we all have to agree that it's a problem. We all have to agree on the solutions. We all have to work together on it at the same time. And obviously, in today's climate, we can't agree on literally fucking anything. So it's a very difficult problem to combat. Yeah.
Without the fans, there is none of this.
Wednesday, August 9th.
I'm so honored to be here.
Baby, you're a rock star. America's biggest super fans meet their superstar idols.
Yeah!
And compete for a once-in-a-lifetime prize.
That is correct! I'm going to take them through my new record, song by song.
You can pick a song, and we can sing it together on stage.
And the title of Ultimate Superfan.
It is up to you, America.
Superfan premieres Wednesday, August 9th on CBS and streaming on Paramount+. Superfan.
Let's get back to the show. I saw you were just on my pal Blair White's show not that long ago, and I want to ask you about the trans issue because this is such a culture war touch point. I'm sure you share my frustration because if you try to talk to some I was on a live stream and for iHypocrite, and they were showing a Bud Light ad. Hold on.
Sorry.
They were showing a Bud Light ad that was aimed for gay people during Pride and had 3 drag queens from Drag Race. And I'm like, oh, I know those queens. Her name is whatever. And the fact that I used the her to refer to a drag queen, the entire chat room lost their minds. And I'm like, look, this is not someone who thinks they're a man. This is someone playing a character. It's very understood. There's no pretense. But to try to explain the difference between drag and cross-dressing, which is often a straight kink, and transgender, or that say these 3 things are different right away. It's like, oh, you want trans kids, so on and so forth. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this issue and whether it's kind of overblown.
My
I know. I hear.
No, it's here. This is my fucking frustration. Okay, without getting too macro level, the Republicans made a deal with the devil when they signed up with Trump, and that has now come to fruition, and it's been disastrous for the Republican Party because now they've got a party that is, I think, still largely allegiant to Donald Trump over the Republican Party, and Donald Trump has no allegiance to the Republican Party.
Yes.
So the whole conservative movement is in a bind right now where their party is eating itself alive. On one end, you've got Donald Trump who's staring down the barrel of soon to be maybe multiple federal indictments, soon to be maybe multiple state indictments, at least one of each. And then on the other end, you've got DeSantis, who, my God, I don't know if just watching him work audiences is like Jesus. So as a result of the Republican Party being like completely fucking destroying itself, and then on the left, regardless of, I'll fight with conservatives on this, and they disagree with me, but I know I'm right. Biden has done a good job at just not being very hateable. He doesn't inspire a lot of passion and support, but he also doesn't inspire a lot of hatred. It's really easy to get fired up hating Obama, hating Hillary Clinton, but like, can you really get fired up like hating Joe Biden? Like, he's not the kind of character that you can. So without the left to attack, without a person on the right to rally around, conservatives find themselves like, what the fuck do we talk about? It's not immigration. It's not the economy. It's barely foreign policy. It's not healthcare. It's all trans issues.
Yes.
So the past year and a half has just been the most ridiculous, obsessive fixation on shit that I don't think anybody cares about. You really give a like, bro, we've had drag queens in this country and shit for so fucking long. Nobody gave a fuck when kids watched like the fucking like the Rocky Horror Picture Show stuff. Nobody gave a fuck when drag queens existed in the country before. Nobody cared about like the child pageants and all that shit, which is infinitely more creepy. Nobody cared about like 10-year-old boys going to Hooters and getting pictures with the girls and the boobs. But now because it's all wrapped up in trans shit, people have lost their fucking mind on it. You ever see the movie Mrs. Doubtfire?
No, but I know what it is, of course.
if that movie got released today, I think conservatives would actually lose their fucking mind. If Mulan got released today, I think conservatives would lose their fucking mind. It's a trans man. What are they doing to kids? They're poisoning them, saying women can be men. It's just like, I don't know. I think that there are interesting arguments to be had about like the ontology of man and woman and what does it mean to redefine these things and blah, blah, blah. But like people are just like in the gutter. Their brains are fucking destroyed. What was the fucking story I read where like I think an old person attacked like a little kid because they thought they were trans. And it was like, what the fuck is. Yeah, it was like insane at a little league game or something.
But hold on, let me push back a little bit
Yeah, go.
this.
Yep.
I know a lot about this. I have a Candy Darling's passport photo in my kitchen, signed with her dead name on the back. So I know a lot about this issue.
Mhm.
There's a big difference between drag in terms of its vaudeville cabaret sense, where it's this nightclub, low life, everyone's drunk or high, having fun, very bawdy humor, and taking a library context and directing it towards children. I think that is, it's like you wouldn't have Hooters school hour. You wouldn't have Chippendale school hour. I think that's the concern. This, leaving apart the other side, and the fact that they're specifically targeting children in terms of, not targeting in terms of converting them, but targeting in terms of having them be initiated into queer theory, that is the concern.
Yeah, I think it just depends on what it looks like. Because like prior to 2020, before COVID rotted everybody's minds, I think that like if a guy dressed up in like a really ridiculous woman's outfit and went to a library to read stories, I don't think most people would care. Because I mean, it was obviously
Giuliani was in drag with Trump. I mean, that was yeah.
Even reading now, if they're reading books about how it's good to be gay or be trans or whatever, obviously people would have issues. But like, I don't think people care or would really care about drag anywhere as much as they seem to be. It's just become kind of like a proxy or like a flashpoint for like trans issues in general. It's like the bathroom issue, like that. The bathroom issue is the most incoherent. Like conservatives will say shit like, I don't want these predators in the women's bathroom because they're gonna rape all the women. It's like, okay, well, I have a 12-year-old son. I would rather have them in the women's bathroom than the male's bathroom. I don't want them attacking my kid, But like this doesn't happen, right? Like all these trans people rape people in the bathroom. Like where the fuck? Like if these stories happen, conservatives would be screaming about them from the rooftops. But somehow it's like one of the most important issues is like who's going into what fucking bathroom. And it's like fuck. In places in Europe, even in places in the U.S., sometimes there are fucking co-ed bathrooms. It's like everybody has a stall. Like who cares? Like yeah, I view a lot of these trans issues or the drag issues especially is like the same. Where like people pretend to really care about them. But I think they're just kind of like proxies for the trans issues because I think right now conservatives just don't have much else to talk about because their party has like no fucking positions on anything right now. That's my feeling on it.
Well, here's my. Do you think that this whole concern with childhood sexual abuse and trafficking and all this stuff, do you think it's overblown? Because like you said, the number of like African Americans who are killed by police on a yearly basis is quite a slow number. It doesn't mean it's not a problem. I'm not saying nothing should be done. I'm just saying if you lurked at the media, you would think this happens on a daily basis and everyone applauds the cops and they're just given statues. So my concern with childhood sexual abuse, I don't like how it's politicized, but I do think this happens far more commonly than people realize. And I think the more it's discussed and the more it's normalized to discuss having been a victim, the healthier it is. Not that long ago, being divorced was a source of shame, or if your mom was a drunk or dad was violent, you didn't have that cultural space to discuss it because it's something that you should be kept in the home. The fact that that's become, if someone was an addict now, instead of them having to be read out of polite society, they go on Good Morning America, be like, you know what, I had a drug problem, I got better. And that actually helps a lot of other people to be like, wait a minute, maybe I should get help. Do you think that issue is something that's being overblown, or you think it's kind of going in a healthy direction?
In terms of talk, I think this is going to be another issue where there is a possibility of a good conversation, but I don't know if it's happening. From the little bit of research that I've seen on child sexual abuse, I think the Australian government published numbers. It's like 10% of people that sexually abuse children are actually pedophiles. And the other 90%, it's usually just like opportunistic. So the way that they determined this was they would check for of all these people, how many of them had ever abused another minor or had ever had possession of any type of child porn or anything like that. And it's like 10%. I think when people think of child sexual abusers, what they think of is like, oh my God, it's like a pedophile going out there finding people, LGBT, whatever they have it. But in reality, it's more likely to just be like a babysitter, a teacher, like people that are basically in positions of power over children that have the opportunity to groom them and sexualize them. Yeah. That now a lot of people, even I can already tell people are mad, like, oh, aren't they pedophiles, blah, blah, blah. It's important to understand the distinction because no, oftentimes they're not pedophiles. They just happen to abuse the people they're around. There's like a different psychological profile for these people. But when we fixate all of it on like pedophiles or LGBT, like I think we lose like the ability to see to like what is the path forward to maintain like safety around our children, right? It's not just getting rid of all LGBT people from babysitting positions, and it's not just like hardcore auditing people to see if they're pedophiles or not, because the people that end up abusing kids aren't usually pedophiles. It's like crimes of opportunity. Yeah, so like, yeah, I mean, obviously I'm going to say it's a problem. I mean, anytime like I've got a kid, yeah, I've got a 12-year-old kid, but like it goes back to that thing of scale again. Like you'll say things like, is this a problem? And some conservatives are like, no matter how small, this is a problem. I don't care, not even one child should go, abducted and sexually abused and blah, blah. It's like, okay, that's fine. I got a 12-year-old. What about kids getting shot up in fucking school? Why is that all of a sudden an okay trade-off, right? Like, do we need to do anything about AR-15s? The guys are like, no, it's important. We need blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, but what about one child there is too many, It's an inconsistent standard. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to sit here and say that like child sexual assault or abuse is good. Obviously, I'm going to be against it. I don't know how much of a problem it actually is. I don't know if it's become worse or better as the years have gone on. I don't have those numbers offhand. But yeah, people obviously want to blow up everything and then make it ideologically driven too, tie it into like trans people or gay people. I don't like that, like, for instance, like the word groomer has been co-opted. Groomer means you're in a position of authority over a person. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a child. Usually it is. And then you leverage that relationship for sexual stuff later on. That's what grooming means. But now people will be like, if you're gay and you tell kids that like sometimes people are gay, that's grooming. And it's like, the fuck? That's not grooming. Yeah, I don't know. All these conversations are so,
Well,
yeah.
the reason I'm coming at it is I had a buddy named Matt, and he came out to me as being a victim, and I talked about it later on Rogan, and I just made the point that like, look, this should not have a stigma. You've been the victim. This shouldn't be your cross to bear for the rest of your life, and you're scared to tell people. And after I did that, I had several other of my friends come out privately and tell me that that happened to them. So if I know for at least 4 or 5 people, and again, I'm one data point, I'm confident that this is far more of an issue than Good Morning America would have us believe, because this is something that's not addressed really in media other than perhaps as a political cudgel, which I think also there's a disingenuous that's there, because it's not like you have to check someone's voter registration. Look at Dennis Hastert, who is Speaker of the House, before them having nefarious designs towards people under their control.
Sure. I can agree with you. It's a problem, but then, there's only one, like, I believe one data-driven solution that I've ever heard of, and I think Republicans would claw their fucking eyes out before accepting it. And I think one of the biggest ways to discourage or dissuade children from being abused is actually sex ed at very early ages, like starting in like first or second grade. Sex ed doesn't have to be like, here's a book that shows you how to, give a blowjob or get in the ass, but it can literally be something as like, everybody has no parts. Don't ever let a stranger interact with them. Yeah. But I don't know if a lot of conservatives would go for any type of that instruction in a first or second grade, because I can already see the fucking headline of third graders, girls taught about boys' penises. And then it's over at that point. DeSantis is going to be signing new legislation before he even gets out of fucking bed to ban that stuff. It's kind of like if you're a conservative, you want to get rid of abortion, right? The best path to get rid of abortion is fucking contraception. It's a good investment economically. It's a good investment morally, because you'd rather have a kid using condoms than fucking aborting a child. But like, yeah. But
by the way, that's why Margaret Sanger invented Planned Parenthood, to prevent abortion and to have birth control, terms she invented. But if you try to explain this to pro-life people, they literally cannot process it, and they think you want eugenics and you want black kids to all be aborted en masse. The two things I would just point out is, yes, I think that's exactly correct. Teach young kids that there's parts of your body that are private, and if any adult, even if someone who's a relative is touching you there, that it's not appropriate and it's okay to say no, and to make sure to tell someone. But also to encourage adults who have had this happen to them to not feel the sense of shame that you didn't do anything wrong. And for the rest of us who have not been victims, to be receptive to being confided in, and to let that person know you're not going to treat them any differently. You're not going to regard them as like a wounded bird, and you could still make jokes with them or treat them exactly the same. They don't have to regard themselves as, because this is also the source, from my understanding, of a lot of drug abuse and alcoholism. It's unresolved childhood trauma, and people don't know how to process it. And the more people can process things that have been done to them, of which they're innocent, I think the healthier we'll all be as a country.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. Yeah, and this is especially a problem on the man side, because it's really embarrassing or shameful to admit, when you have issues. So this would be a problem of, I feel like I've hit on conservatives a lot today, but like this would be a problem of the internal locus of control, that if you do truly feel like you're responsible for everything in your life and you can handle everything, and you've failed, man, talk about the ultimate fucking failure. Like, you're a loser that drinks, you've tried to quit smoking 5 times, you can't do it, like blah, blah, blah. It's a hard thing to deal with, but like there are stories of people that fail to quit smoking, 10 times in 10 years.
Sure.
And on year 12, they quit.
Yep.
And there are stories of people that, were abused as children, but came out and they were able to, figure their shit out. You have to see people, you have to see people come back from failing like that, or from having like negative shit in their life done to that, because people need to see that it's possible. For like, representation is real. People on the left figured it out. Black people like to see black people on screen. Women like to see women on the screen. And in real life, if you're a victim of something, you want to see somebody else that was a victim, rise up and overcome it. Like, it feels good. We like to put ourselves in those stories, and it inspires us to achieve what the other person has when we can see ourselves in them.
It's what Henry Hazlitt spoke about in terms of the seen versus the unseen, meaning you can see all the books that I wrote and have published, but you're going to be oblivious to all the books I wrote that went out to all the publishers and no one was interested, and now they're sitting in a drawer because those are going to be invisible to you. So you're only going to be like, oh my God, this guy's a successful author. Where it's like, yeah, but every successful author, well, almost every, is also a failed author, because they have those manuscript or book proposals, whatever, that went nowhere. But again, you're not going to be privy to seeing them for specific reason that they did go nowhere. Destiny, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this interview?
What has been my that's a question that did break me. Talking about my good friend Jesse Lee Peterson, who's not my good friend, but what a wacky guy. Yeah.
You are welcome.